It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Jody Gangloff Kaufman. Jody is the Associate Director at the New York State IPM program, and she is the coordinator of Community IPM, where she leads a team of experts that help people manage pests where they live, work, learn, and play.
Mhm.
And one of those places is schools. Schools are back in session, and a lot of things get sent home with students, but hopefully one of them is not bed bugs. So Jody today is going to give us some insights about how you can help students avoid bringing bed bugs back home. So take it away, Jody.
Thank you. Okay, thanks for being here. Go away, subtitles. I don't need that. And I'm going to tell you the top 5 tips. One of the advertisements for this webinar was said, help your student to avoid bringing bed bugs home. And really, this is more about the adults. This is what adults can do because students don't really have that responsibility as much as adults do. But let's talk about it. Why are bed bugs problematic in schools, or how are they problematic? In work that I did with New York City, looking at thousands of samples that were submitted during a really bad time of bedbug infestation, what we noticed was in kindergarten through 12th grade schools, the elementary schools were the most vulnerable among all. And I think there are some reasons. I speculate these reasons. Number one, elementary school kids are not concerned about their image the way high schoolers are. Elementary school kids carry their book bag and lunch maybe, but elementary school kids also wear their coats. It's one of the things about high school students. They don't carry much and they don't wear coats. So the elementary schools kids are moving more of their belongings around. But the greatest risk in any kind of bedbug transfer situation is transferring a mated female bedbug, because a mated female can start an infestation on her own, whereas whereas males and nymphs can't do that. And only about 60% of the bed bugs found in New York City schools were female, and a portion of those were mated. So the risk is lower, really, when you look at the overall risk among all the different bed bugs. There is little risk of bed bugs breeding in schools. We have not really come across infestations that went beyond a female laying eggs and having larvae. If there's no chance to have a blood meal because no one is sleeping in the building, and schools are hostile environments anyway, we don't really have the issue of bed bugs festering in a school. But what we do get is the risk of transfer of bed bugs from person to person, and usually with between belongings. So that's our greatest risk in schools. So my tip number 1 about this is awareness. Simple. Know what to look for, know what bed bugs look like, and understand where you might find them and how to find them. In this picture, you can see the adult bed bug on the left, and above that bed bug is a nymph. And the size difference isn't that great, so both are visible to the naked eye. On the left, you see a poppy seed, and on the right, you see a pretty large sesame seed. So bed bugs are not as big as apple seeds. They're a little smaller. This one's very dried out, so it's very small compared to a live one or a blood-filled one. But remember that bed bugs are very flat. So that middle picture is a bed bug on the tip of my finger trying to get a bite. You can see this little stylet. And this bed bug could easily fit underneath my fingernail, which is gross, but it's true. So you know the bed bugs can fit into crevices, under seams, and they like to be under in those little tight spots. And the egg right there doesn't do it justice because they are kind of bright white, but the picture here it's a millimeter long, and the new hatchling is also a millimeter long. This is what you're going to look for. In addition, you're going to look for the evidence that bed bugs leave behind. Now, this picture looks like a scenario from a nightmare, but really it's just a bedbug colony. And you can see the white eggs all over, and you see the dark fecal spots. That's digested blood. So if you find a spot and you're suspicious, you can take a wet cloth, paper towel, or whatever, and rub it on that spot. It could be a magic marker spot. It could be bedbug. It could be something. If it comes off rusty, it does suggest that that is a blood-based source, and it's worth keeping a lookout for any bed bugs. So in this, you can see all the evidence of bed bugs, including their cast skins and various sizes, and those bright white eggs with a little cap on them. Tip number 2, communicate, don't shame. I once said that one day everyone in the United States will have encountered bed bugs or will know someone who has. And I think we're pretty close to that. I think it's pretty easy to say we all have seen them or know somebody who's had them or whatever. So we're all in this together. That's the point here. Anyone can get bed bugs. Um, it's really hard to prove their origin or to prove who's responsible or who's at fault because people often don't know that they have them. I always say bed bugs aren't everywhere, but they can be anywhere. And people inadvertently pick them up, bring them home, and they may not know they have them for a period of time, especially when people don't react. So it can also be very expensive to treat for bed bugs. And a lot of people out there don't have the means. There are people in our communities who are forced to live with bed bugs because they can't get rid of them. They may be in an apartment building where they're not the main, they're the victims of like an infestation that's moving in. And the landlord, they may be subject to landlord negligence and things. So it can be people unfortunately living with bed bugs and having to go about their day. In an apartment, it needs to be a community effort because bedbugs so easily move around apartment buildings, both on their own and by the activity of people just doing laundry and stuff. And schools do best when they are above board with communication. If a bedbug is found in a classroom, it is good to have a protocol in place and to have good communication with the classroom or the whole school to alert everybody to take the right precautions. Now, tip number 3, everything that you own, nearly everything, can be isolated, even a couch. But let's back up from that. You can live without most important things for 6 months or so. And if you seal things into, Ziploc bags like this one's kind of a smallish one, but books and papers, your wedding album, a violin, all the things that we have that are, kind of important to us, all these things can be isolated for a period of time instead of thrown away. And you can use these zippered XX, triple X Ziploc bags. They can fit a lot of household things. You can use clear plastic bags. Clear is really recommended so you know what's in it, but you can also see bed bugs that are wandering to the corners looking to get out. And plastic bins that are taped shut to make sure that they are airtight. All of these things can be used to isolate things. A very important point here is to isolate them in warm places, not in cold places, because when it's warm, the bed bug's metabolism continues and they desiccate very quickly. They dry out. They just starve to death, but they really die of thirst. Isolation of students' belongings in school. If there's an incident in school where we know bed bugs are coming into the classroom, when there's a risk, keeping the students' belongings apart is the key thing. For each student in a classroom, we can suggest using a plastic bin, a dry cleaning bag that hangs on a hanger and separates everybody's, it's tied at the bottom maybe, or the triple, double, extra large Ziploc bags to isolate each kid's belongings, the coat, the backpack from others. It's really about belongings, right? Some schools quietly keep clean clothes for the kids who have issues at home, and that's a coordination between probably the nurse's office and the parents at home, with the encouragement to the parents to try to do something about the infestation at home. And teachers and staff, I always encourage them to hang their belongings up in a safe place. For example, behind the classroom door, hanging things up high, off the floor, somewhere on the wall or the door itself to keep your pocketbook and your coat and stuff away from other people's stuff and definitely off the floor and away from furniture. Now, precautions to avoid transfer to your home. If your kid goes to school, comes home, it's a good idea to have a bin where coats and backpacks coming home from school go into a closed bin or an airtight plastic bag for the day. That's a way of precautioning, taking care of, or preventing the spread of bed bugs into the home. In other words, you don't want your kid bringing that backpack into their bedroom, right? Parents should inspect the books, the backpack, any devices and other belongings when the kids get home, or store them until they can be inspected. And I know that's not feasible with homework and stuff, but these are just precautions one can take when there is a risk. Make sure the kids know what bed bugs look like. They're the first, first responders here. They're the ones who are going to see them, maybe in classroom or in their own bedroom. And if the risks are common or you're overly worried, not overly, but if you're worried, install protective covers on all your mattresses and box springs, because this will, number one, prevent you from having to discard bedding, and to make your surface, the surface of your sleeping area, easily inspected and impossible to infest, right? We have this home to work protocol. This is found on our website, finally. This is tips to avoid getting and spreading bed bugs. And this works in both directions. If you are living with bed bugs and you want to go to work or school without bringing them with you, this is the protocol for you. And if you work in a risky environment or your kid goes to school and bed bugs have shown up, this is the protocol for you. So it's for use in both directions, applicable to kids and adults, low cost actions with a few household items, and a process that is like a sterile process. It keeps you from, ideally, keeps you from moving bed bugs back and forth. You can find this on our website, which I will show you at the end. Now, tip number 4, use traps for monitoring your home if you feel that there is risk. What I have here are pitfall traps. There are no attractants to these traps except you on the bed. So this style of pitfall trap works when the bed has one under each leg and the bed is away from the wall and nothing is touching the floor or the side table, right? So you've made your bed an island. These are effective, they're safe, they're reusable, and they are protective. So if bed bugs are coming from some item in the house or another apartment, for example, bed bugs will climb up the rough exterior and get caught in that outer well. And if bed bugs are coming off the bed somehow, they're going to be inside that inner well. So what we expect is that if you don't have bed bugs, but you have a risk, you might find one in that outer well. These devices kill bed bugs. They capture them and kill them because they can't get out and they just desiccate, and they're easy to inspect. So traps can provide a lot of information to you. There are other types of bedbug traps, including sticky traps, which are not very effective because bedbugs are sensitive. They don't like to walk on sticky surfaces the way other animals will just stumble on them. But they work as a monitor that when bedbugs drop from the bed under, onto the floor, so they can catch bedbugs that are falling off the bed. Carbon dioxide traps mimic, human breath, and they lure bedbugs to the trap. These are larger, they're more expensive, and they involve cartridges or chemicals, and that's an example pictured there. I don't know what's on the market today that's really working. Therefore, I would not, recommend maybe these to homeowners. There are pheromone traps as well. They lure bedbugs in with an aggregation pheromone, but these have a very short range, 3 to 5 feet maybe, so we're not going to attract bed bugs from edges of the room in, to the trap. And they have to be refreshed. There are a variety of products out there. Again, it's a little high tech for low reward. And then there's a lot of homemade traps that involve carbon dioxide or, dry ice, for example, and sticky and pitfall strategies. And if you feel industrious and you have a bed bug issue, you might try this. But otherwise, these pitfall traps are really the most effective for the least cost and effort. Okay, tip 5, found a bed bug, call a professional. Early detection is the best protection. If you find a bed bug, if you find 2 bed bugs for sure, call a pro. You need to have someone do an inspection, and the pest professional will know where to look. They may also bring a canine with them who is specialized in identifying bed bug hiding spots. And this will also help you discover the scope of the problem. It could be that it's just limited to one small area, easily taken care of. It could be that it has spread a little bit here and there. Treatment will be needed if you do have multiplying bed bugs. And treatment doesn't necessarily mean chemistry. It could mean, we have a variety of options: heat, steam, vacuuming, of course, pesticides, and we have a biocontrol option now, which is a fungus. Treatment options, they vary in cost, they vary in efficacy and safety, but there are just more options than ever before. So discuss it with your pest professional. But how do you find a reliable pest control company? We want to see pest control companies licensed by the New York State DEC and insured. Each technician and applicator needs to be licensed as an applicator. The company should be a member of some professional organizations like the National Pest Management Association or the New York State New York Pest Management Association. We can look at online reviews making sure the company is at least somewhat good and trustworthy. There is no pest control company out there that has 100% rating by the public because it's an emotional issue and people are often dissatisfied with pest control that takes longer than they expect it to be. But you'll know they're good if they know and they use integrated pest management. You'll know the company is good if they listen to your concerns and they don't belittle you or ignore you. I think that's one of the top things that I would look for in a pest control company. Are they listening to me and are they working with me? If they're willing to try low risk strategies, if you desire, like heat, steam, vacuuming, and biological control option, that's a great indicator. And they have to propose a plan for eradication, not just management. We'll come in every month and we'll treat. That is not an acceptable approach to bedbug management. But the pest pros won't do everything. So they'll inspect, they'll treat the walls, the floors, the carpets, and the furniture, but they will not touch your underwear drawer. They're not going to go into your magazines, books, photographs, kids' toys. They're not going to do anything about all that unless they're doing a whole unit heat treatment. So what I'm saying is that you will have to participate, and we have created this resource, How to Get Bedbugs Out of Your Belongings. This is the guide to all the household goods with multiple strategies. Each item has the sorted strategies that will work for that. So shoes, you might heat the shoes, you might isolate the shoes, etc. Each item has a list of things that would work for that. And you can find this on our website. One precaution, if you click on the link to download it, if you click on the link and you think you'll open it, it downloads. It's a 70-page PDF. We know that's not ideal. We're working on it. But remember that it doesn't just open, it will download to your download space. So look for it there. Other self-help resources from the New York State IPM include our visual guides here. These are like fact sheets with pictures instead of a lot of words, courtesy of Matt Fry, who also helped write the Bed Bugs Out of Your Belongings. And so we have this in English and then Spanish. These are printable, these are shareable, and they really just walk someone through all the self-help things that need to happen. When you visit the New York State IPM website and use the drop-down menu from What's Bugging You, you'll see What's Bugging You, which is our set of fact sheets, and bed bugs are pretty high up there. So you will find all of the resources we have on bed bugs at that link. And I'm sure you've shared or you know the New York State IPM general website. So that's what I have today, short and sweet. And I hope that you have questions.
Great. Thank you, Jody. I will invite others to put some questions in here now, but I was hoping while people are kind of collecting their thoughts and writing in a question or two, that you might talk about how parents should respond if they get a notification that there have been bed bugs in the schools. Like, what should their level of concern be, and how should they approach that?
Good question. That's a loaded question. If I were the parent and I got a notice, I would definitely want to know what procedures were happening in the classroom. And mostly in the classroom, it should be just a thorough cleaning, including a vacuuming, but they should be visited by a pest control professional to make sure that every, little crevice is inspected or, I don't really know a lot that pest control professionals can do other than that in the classroom unless they really find some serious amount of bed bugs. But what precautions are being taken place in the classroom if someone spots a bed bug? We don't need to identify the individual who maybe had brought it in. Sometimes, in some cases, we've had a building where multiple kids from different apartments all had brought in bed bugs, and it was unfortunate because you don't want to identify and shame these kids. You just want to work with them. So the classroom should have immediately implemented one of the isolation strategies for kids' belongings. I would expect to see that. And then at home, I'm a sit and wait kind of person, and I'm biased. I know what bed bugs are and look like and how to look for them. But I would probably go to the pitfall traps and take the precautions in the home to work protocol to make sure my kid didn't bring them home. And if he does, we've captured them,
Awesome. And so what I don't hear you saying is panic and throw everything out. And that's why it's a loaded question, because we often see parents kind of go to the extreme when as you say, it could be a sit and wait situation where you determine if there's actually a risk and if your kid actually might have brought something home. So thank you for that. A comment from Lou Sorkin, who, if you know Lou, he's a bedbug expert as well and knows a lot about all kinds of structural pest issues. And Lou said that cardboard coffee sleeves, so like a Java jacket or corrugated cardboard, are useful tools for bedbug monitors. So that could be an option for you at home, or if you're traveling, as Lou indicated, you could use that to quickly monitor for bed bugs.
That's a great idea.
A question came in about diatomaceous earth and wondering if it's effective for getting rid of bed bugs and how long it takes to be effective.
Diatomaceous earth, when you use the variety that is labeled for bed bugs, and there is a variety labeled, is effective it can be a deterrent because it can prevent bed bugs from walking effectively, and eventually it does cause the desiccation of those bugs, but it works very slowly. So it's not something that's going to kill them immediately. And follow those label instructions if you are using it at home, which is perfectly fine. You want to have the fine layer of dust, not piles of it. So for example, if you were to put some on, I'm not recommending this as an application technique, but if you were to put some on your hand and blow it, that's about the kind of application you want to see in areas where you have bed bugs, which would be around the bed frame, underneath the bed on the floor, around the end tables and the headboard. So.
And we'll do one more quick question, and then we'll transition to our IPM minute. So the next question that came in was, do bed bugs bite pets as well as people?
Yes, we've had instances where bed bugs have bitten the soft, bald belly of a dog. So they will use pets. I am surprised constantly that we don't have more people who are bird owners having bed bugs in their bird cages. Never heard of it. But mostly animals are furry enough to ward off bed bugs because bed bugs are not adapted to climbing in animal fur. So that is the anecdotal answer. Any other questions that come up in the chat, I am happy to write down the answers and Matt will share them with everybody.
Great. Thank you so much, Jody.
Thank you.
At this point, we will transition to our IPM Minute, which takes a quick snapshot about another issue that is time relevant. And so, of course, with schools, we're keeping that theme today. So our speaker for the IPM Minute is Joellen Lampman, and she is an extension support specialist with the New York State IPM program, focusing on IPM for schools and turfgrass settings. Today, Joellen will provide information about another stress-inducing insect that kids might bring home from schools, head lice. So thank you, Joellen.
Thank you, Matt. So yes, I have been asked to talk about another creepy bloodsucker. So I often find when talking about bed bugs or lice, it just helps to kind of do the itching now, get it out of the way. Whenever we're talking about any kind of pest, I really like the Swiss cheese model because this really demonstrates that basic idea behind integrated pest management, that no single action is 100% successful on its own, but you want to take many actions such as sanitation, trapping, exclusion that Jody was talking about. It's just a much more reliable approach to pest management. So number one, know your pests. So let's dive in a little bit into lice, or head lice specifically. There are different types. So there's small insects that infest human hair and feed on blood from the scalp area. The adults are about the size of sesame seeds, and all stages are visible to the naked eye, but a magnifier really helps when you're doing monitoring and determining whether you have them or not. And some symptoms that might clue you in that you have head lice, it would include itching or tickling on the scalp, or even some sores on the scalp. And one thing that will show up are these nits, or the eggs that are laid by the adults. They're usually along the base of the hair, and the adults glue them into place. One thing to realize is that these empty nits can stay in the hair for months. So if you're doing your monitoring, you want to take a really close look to see if they have hatched or not. And as you can see in this picture, you can actually see the lice growing within that egg. And whether the adults or the nits, once removed from the human host, they're going to die pretty quickly, certainly within 36 hours. And I just love this, getting deep into it. This is the lice claw, and they are specialized for clinging to human hairs. So they're very specialized. So dogs, cats, other pets, they don't carry or spread human lice. And once off the body, the lice can't crawl or climb well. And that's how they move. They move by crawling. They're kind of going along the hair itself. They can't hop, they can't fly. So the way they spread from one person to another is when the hair gets tangled within each other. So who's going to get them? Mostly it's going to be these kids. And usually it's going to be kids that are 10 or younger, because they spend way more time in close contact with each other, allowing those hairs to flow together. Though not as common, they can spread through the wearing of clothing such as hats or hair ribbons that were worn by an infested person, or through infested combs or brushes, or occasionally if you're like snuggled up to a stuffed animal that had been recently in contact with an infested person. But by far, it's mostly going to be this head-to-head contact that, again, kids are most likely to do. Good news, the lice do not transmit any diseases, so mostly we're dealing with the ick factor. So I talked a little bit of an inspection, and the best way to do that is with a lice comb. Studies have revealed that diagnosis of infestations by using this comb is quicker and more efficient than, say, using a standard comb, because the very, very fine teeth is going to be able to separate that hair and pull off the lice and the nits themselves. So once you get it pulled through, you can inspect anything that might have been pulled out of the hair. So when we look at management, lice are controlled on the person. We're not looking to do any kind of treatment of the indoor space, because they're not going to survive off of the human host. And indeed, there are no sprays that are even labeled for head lice. So we're really going to be focusing on the person itself. And let's go back to that lice comb. They're recommended over plastic, or metal combs are recommended over plastic combs because the tines are stronger. And regardless of what else you use, combing should be part of your strategy for managing lice. What about pesticides? Lice are transmitted over and over from school to school and person to person, and they kind of build up in communities. So people are running to the store and they're grabbing off-the-shelf pesticide products, and that can lead to resistance. Pesticide resistance is just an inevitable consequence of constantly treating a pest with pesticides. And basically what's happening is that some bugs have the genetics to survive the spraying. And in this picture, those are the yellow bugs. And they go on to reproduce until most of the bugs have adaptations to resist the chemical sprays. And we're really seeing a lot of pesticide resistance with especially the over-the-counter drugs. There are other ones that you can use. There are prescription medications that are available, and you can talk to your healthcare provider about that. We list those in our head lice frequently asked questions fact sheet that we have, and we're going to put a link to that in the chat. And we also, on our What's Bugging You page, have a page that's dedicated to lice, and I would recommend that you head that way. And if you want to see lice in actual action, I recommend visiting the Deep Look YouTube channel. They have this wonderful video on that. And that's my time. Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Joellen. You, of course, covered a lot of content in a short amount of time. Unfortunately, we are at our time for today, so we'll have to take questions for another time. I do want to thank everybody for attending today. Hopefully, you won't leave this session itching. You'll feel a little more confident in dealing with these two pests. Our next session for October is going to deal with identifying pests in your home, taking a look at how to identify them, and then maybe using some apps or other services to identify them. So we hope you join us next month. So thank you, everybody, and we hope you have a great weekend.